Thank you and welcome to Author Chat. I'm sitting here today with Sam Lightner Jr., who is author of The Heavy Green. Got a copy right here for viewers to see. And welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. You are an author of fiction and nonfiction. And your new book, Heavy Green, is fiction. Tell us a little bit about that, because we know it covers I don't want to mispronounce this. Can you?
Pupati.
Fufati.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. And climbing, going through that whole process. Can you talk to me a little bit about what inspired you to select that particular mountain as a backdrop for this book?
Well, before I'm a writer, I'm a climber, rock climber, mountain climber, have been all my life. And I fell in love years ago with the type of rock you find in Southeast Asia. Specifically, there's now a major climbing area there in southern Thailand, and I was one of the first people to go there. And when I went to that area, I wanted to climb on that rock. I wanted to explore that region. This was 1990 about, and I wanted to go to these other countries because I found out that same rock formation that you find in southern Thailand exists in Laos and Vietnam and even southern China, and it's much thicker. It's a much bigger band of rock. And because of that, you get bigger cliff faces. At that time, you couldn't go anywhere in Laos, and there was very little information on Laos, except from military sources. And I happen to be a history buff. I love history, and my specific history I like is Southeast Asian history and what we would call the First and Second Indochina Wars or the Vietnam War. So I started using my history, my love of the history, to actually research rock climbing venues. And one particular mountain kept coming up as having a very large face of this limestone, and that is Pupati in Laos. So I came to this story from the standpoint of being a climber before I was coming to it as someone wanting to write a historical fiction book.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the book and the plot of this book, and what you want readers to kind of get out of it, and why you want them
to. Well, people our age, I'm guessing we're of a, so I'm probably a little older than you, but if you're born during the war or after, you don't ever get to learn about it. It's a taboo subject for teachers to go into because they could be teaching a kid who lost a family member, and therefore in the war, therefore the emotions run high in that family, or it could be a family member who was in the anti-war movement. And so teachers just don't even go into it. So I wanted to write a book that sort of covered all the bases and was entertaining and made people want to learn about what the war was about, why the war was fought the way it was fought, and so forth. But I also wanted to tell this little-known story of this event that took place on this particular mountain. And that event is that the United States and Vietnam, North Vietnam at the time, were not supposed to be in Laos. But the North Vietnamese were running the Ho Chi Minh Trail. All their supplies that went to the war in the South were going through Laos. And we were trying to stop all those supplies. And we did so mostly through aerial bombing. And we directed much of the bombing from this mountain. So, yeah.
So, we have a statement from you where you said that you never actually intended to be a writer. So, how did you decide to? And this isn't your first book. So, how did you decide to venture into writing?
Well, that first trip to Thailand, changed a lot in my life. I wound up living in Southeast Asia for a good bit of a 25-year period and so forth. But that first trip, I just had an amazing time. I thought I was going to a very dangerous place, and I thought I was going to be sleeping on a beach, but with mosquitoes biting me all night long, and going to be in a very remote spot. And what I found was absolute paradise with $2 a night bungalows and people making food for me for cheap. That was the best food I'd ever had, and these beautiful rock faces to climb, and perfectly clear water, and beautiful girls running around in bikinis and so forth. And it was just like, it was paradise. Mm-hmm. And I was there for 3 weeks, and I got on an airplane to fly home. This is 1990. And I sat down and just said, I've got to write down this wonderful trip that's just happened to me. Right. So I did, and Rock and Ice magazine asked to publish it, and then said, hey, if you ever want to go to any other crazy, wacky places for rock climbing, let us know. We like your writing, and we'll publish it. And I did a few more. I did China. I went to China. I went to Vietnam. I went to multiple places in Africa, and accidentally ended up with a resume. So it hadn't been a plan to be a writer, but that's just what started working.
Oh, great. So you, this book, Heavy Green, focuses on Vietnam War. And one of the things that you've been very vocal about saying is that Vietnam history is now. Why do you make this particular distinction between past and present, and what should readers get out of your book that makes that history now?
Well, to a lot of people, Vietnam is a touchy subject, right, for what I just said, and it's an interesting thing that Vietnam is a touchy subject. It's, I believe, a good bit of why it is because so many Americans died and we still lost the war. Okay. Way more Americans died in World War II. But 10 years after World War II, you had filmmakers already making films about, D-Day. And right. It was a subject that could be talked about and with reverence, and people could be proud of it. Mm-hmm. With Vietnam, if you start talking about it, people get upset. And I guess what I'm trying to say with this is, we have to accept that this is in our history, mm-hmm. and it's no longer some subject that we should say, well, we don't really want to talk about it because we might offend people or mm-hmm. something. This actually happened, so let's take a look at it. And the distance in time now that we are from that war, from the end of World War II. Mm-hmm. I mean, how do I put this? We're 40 plus years away from the end of the war for us. Right. And yet it's still kind of this taboo subject. If it was the end of World War II, this would be 1985, where we would be saying it's a taboo subject that we shouldn't talk about, right. It would be just a completely different era. Mm-hmm. And yet we're still kind of touchy about it. So I'd like us to start looking at it as history, even though the people who fought there and were a part of it are still with us. It's right. still historical, right. and we need to be looking at it. And the fact is, you don't learn your history, you will repeat it. And even if you do learn it, you might repeat it anyway. But we're getting another Vietnam right now. Right. And we're in a long-term war. I'm not sure what the solution to that war is, but we thought Vietnam was a long war because we were involved for over 10 years. We're in 12 years now to Afghanistan. Yeah. So something I think that we can all learn from and maybe get some lessons to help us as we go forward.
Right. Well, you mentioned earlier that you lived and traveled throughout Southeast Asia and in Africa. Do you think that any of your future books will look at different events or take place in any of those settings, because you've seen them, so you can bring them to life?
Yeah, I think that the characters from this book could turn up in in the next version of the Cold War. Vietnam was really you could look at it as a battle within the Cold War. The Korean War was a battle within the Cold War.
Right.
Things taking place in Africa were, well, the Russians had their Vietnam too, and it was Afghanistan. And I think these characters may just pop up in a book about Afghanistan.
Oh, will that be your next book, or do you have something else you're working on?
I've got some stuff I'm working on for some climbing publishers, nonfiction stuff, but I think those are going to go on hold, and I'm going to start working on the Soviet War book.
Oh, okay. So you also have a book tour. You're going on a book tour to promote Heavy Green and meet with people and talk to readers. That's at the end of September. Do you know how long it will be and how many places you'll be visiting?
I think, close to a dozen places. It's actually, we've added some stuff, so it's actually going to start next week in Jackson, Wyoming.
Okay.
And we've got dates all the way through November, basically all across the middle of the country. We haven't hit anything yet. We're not planning anything yet on the East Coast or the West Coast, but I'm sure that'll come in time.
And on your tour, people can expect to buy the book and meet with you and hear some things you have to say about the book.
Yeah.
And where can our viewers find you on social media?
Well, Heavy Green has a Facebook page. Okay. I have a page, samlightnerjr.com. They can go there. There's also a author's page at Amazon under my name, and that's where you can get the book. And I have a personal page on Facebook too, but I don't pay that much attention to it. So I pay more attention to the Heavy Green page. Great.
Thank you so much for talking with us today, and congratulations on your book, and good luck on the book tour.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And we'll see you later.
All right. Thank you so much, Sam, for doing this. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.